Hello again and welcome to another Excel tutorial. Today we're going to look at the Vlookup function, probably one of the most common lookup functions that Excel possesses, and a lot of people are confused by Vlookups, but in actual fact they're really quite easy and they do have their limitations, but one of the limitations can be used to our advantage, and that is that by default a Vlookup returns an approximate value. Now, to show you what I mean, I've got my little sample spreadsheet here called Fantastic Flights, and as you can see, all I've got in this spreadsheet is the destination of the flight, the airport it left from in the UK, the date that the flight took place, and how much it cost. And what I want Excel to do is to put in a rate for airport tax in column E, and I want that tax taken from this little table over here. In Vlookup terms, this is called the table array. I'm going to put the Vlookup function in this cell here for E4. What I want it to do is to look at this cell, B4, which contains the name of the airport, and then I want it to match that in this little table over here, my table array, and when it finds the cell that contains the word Heathrow, I want it to return the value for the airport tax that corresponds to that airport. So let's see how this works in practice. I'm going to start typing an equal sign followed by VL, and as you'll know if you've used 2007 or 2010, there's this predictive text feature that pops up the name of the function. I'm going to accept that by pressing the Tab key. Excel puts the function in and the opening bracket for me, and then the first thing it asks me is, what do you want to match? What is the lookup value? Well, in this case the lookup value is obviously going to be the name of the airport. So I'm going to click in cell B4, and as you can see Excel automatically inserts that cell reference for me. I'm now going to put a comma after that, and as soon as I do that, the tooltip now moves across to the next piece of information Excel is asking for, which is the table array. Now, we've already established that the table array is this little set of data that's arranged in a table between cells H3 and I6. So I'm going to select those, and I'm going to copy this function down to the remaining cells. So what I need to do with this is make these references absolute. So we've looked at this before. I'm going to press the F4 function key, which then puts the dollar signs in automatically for me. So I've now got absolute H3 to absolute I6. Then going to put in another comma, and then the final piece of the jigsaw is what's the column index number. Now people get confused with this, but it's really very simple. All it means is how many columns from the left do you want the information returned from, and the first column, in this case column H, that's the first column in the table array, is always numbered 1. So in this case I'm going to get the value returned from the second column because the first one, H, is 1, so I want the values returned from column I, so I'm going to put in a 2. Now at this point you can see that there's an extra option here at the end, which is enclosed in square brackets. Now that's an option and I'm not going to use it for this particular example, but when we move on to the next piece of this tutorial I'll show you what happens when we do that. For now I'm just going to close that parenthesis and then press enter, and as expected we've now got the correct percentage, in this case Heathrow, 7% returned and entered in cell E4. Now I'm going to duplicate that down to the remaining cells by double clicking, and I've now got all my airport tax rates in that column. Now if you look at this, you'll notice that there is a deliberate mistake. So I'll give you a moment just to have a look and see if you can recognize it. If you're stuck, have a look at the name of the airport and then have a look at our table array. Got it? Yep, it's Manchester. So each of these cells that say Manchester are not represented in this table array, and yet Excel has returned a value, and it's returned the value of 3% for each of them. Now that's pretty bizarre, except that when you realize what we've done here is we've used the default settings which are to return an approximate value. Now, like I mentioned at the beginning, this is the default. Excel will always give you the nearest to it, and in this case it's just given us the last entry because it doesn't know any better. We haven't told it that we want an exact match. Okay, so I'm going to leave this tutorial here, and in the next tutorial we'll look at what happens when we do make an exact match. Okay, we'll do the same exercise with the name of the consultant, and in that case we want the name returned from this little table array over here. Now there's a quick tip for you here before I leave, and that is that VLOOKUPs work extremely well with named ranges. So if you have a named range in your spreadsheet, you'll find that these work really seamlessly. Okay, so thanks very much for watching, and hope you've enjoyed that and found it useful, and I look forward to seeing you on the next tutorial. Thanks for watching.